welcome to this week's edition of Rugby Unfiltered. I'm your host, Jan de Koning, and with me as always, Eugene Eloff. Loffie, welcome.
Hi, Jan. Yes, man. And welcome to, I feel, after a great weekend of rugby, a few exciting or interesting results in URC. The Varsity Cup that's getting full swing. So, yeah, a lot of rugby, a lot of news happening on the rugby front. So I'm excited about this program.
Yeah. Just so our readers know, I went to the rugby, to Rassie's, or the SARU press conference, because it was Rian Oberholzer, the CEO, Rassie, the Springbok coach, and his entire coaching staff. So I attended that, and we'll deal with that in length. But I think maybe it's good to start with the exciting results from the weekend and how the rugby, the underdogs, teams that a month ago looked like to be nowhere, and suddenly they're in the playoffs, and the Stormers are dropping, and the Sharks are also basically out of the running.
Yes, Sean, as we discussed in our last episode about the Lions actually becoming consistent and how important this win was for them. I mean, it all showed. And with them also, announcing the sponsorship of Val Bartmann's company, I think it's Fidelity. And all of a sudden, there's a buzz in Joburg again, and the rugby, the entertainment on the field was unreal. And that's why I said the Lions are going to be very difficult to beat there. They kept their composure. They made very good decisions. And on the day, they deserve to win that. I think Dobbo must be worried about his team. It just seemed to me that the Stormers were direction. They didn't have direction and a lack of leadership. They couldn't get into their normal mode. And I don't want to take out just Sasha and refer to him. I just don't think they played as a team. They didn't look hungry to win it. And maybe the start. Sometimes a start needs to be more difficult so that you can improve, because that's exactly what the Lions did. So yeah, they can be pretty chuffed with that win. And then of course the Bulls, Aki's doing so well with the Bulls, and I don't want to take nothing away from JP Peterson. He's done a lot with that group. And again, we need to be patient with him as a coach, getting systems up and running and so on. But on the day, the Bulls just outplayed them on all facets of the game.
Yeah. I know you said you don't want to touch on Sasha, but the reality is the Stormers' decline coincided with Sasha's decline in form. Now, we all know the saying, form is temporary, class is permanent. So I'm sure Sasha will be back. But at the moment, he's going through a slump, and he's doing too much individualistically. And we've said this before. He's trying too hard to do things on his own. And we must remember, Lofi, and you will know, this is still a team sport. You can have brilliant individuals. Lars Botha didn't always win all the games by himself. He always said to his forwards, you give me the ball, I'll win the game. But his forwards had to go get the ball. And I think that's where the problem with the Stormers is Sasha's trying too much. And then obviously the Sharks, JP, he's still struggling. A lot of his Springboks are still on a rest period, whereas Johan Ackerman has now had his Springboks for a couple of weeks and his couple of games as well. And he's been able to work with him consistently. And that's the big difference between those two teams, is the one who's had their Springboks. And we know that the Sharks, their biggest name after Siya Kolisi, their biggest name, Eben Etzebeth, is still banned. So he's not going to feature for them in any competition this season. He's going to be available for the internationals in July. So they're going to struggle because they play with Locks, who is not up to Roan Urque's standard, and that's a big thing. The physicality of the Bulls is what puts them apart at the moment. And the South African, I think, in my humble opinion, the Bulls are the team that's got our best chance. I don't think the Stormers have got the pack of forwards to go all the way. They'll get to the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to go much further than quarterfinals. Maybe a semi-final, but I can't see the Stormers on current form going any further than the quarterfinals.
Yeah, it's an interesting remark you're making, and I can understand where you're coming from. The big thing, if you go into playoffs, on that day, if you arrive at the field and things happen for you, you could actually surprise the rest of the rugby world not having form and winning a game. And I really hope the Stormers can get it back again, that vibe they had, that confidence they had. But the one thing I must say, if I look at the whole process of our country's rugby, holistic, taking in consideration all the provinces that played, rugby's healthy in our country, and that's a good thing. You know, there's a lot of youth coming through the systems. The coaches are backing them, and yeah, take nothing away from this weekend's rugby. It was top quality, and again, the Lions winning the Shield, I think they needed that the most of all the provinces, and hopefully they can build on that.
Yeah, I think it's been 5 or 6 years since they won anything, and we know they lost in the last 2 K-Cup finals in a heartbreaking fashion. So well done to Ivan van Rooyen and the team and his coaching staff, Wessel and Jacques and all those guys. I think I've been very critical of them, but I think they're finally getting I wouldn't say they get the act together, but they're finally getting it right and they're having a bit of luck. And yeah, I hope they actually reach the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm glad the Lions management stuck to their guns, and I know they've had a lot of criticism from us as well, and mostly from Lions supporters. But sometimes just being patient and sticking with your guys helps. But they need to see it through. I'm privileged to say that I coached Jacques and Wessel at Tikkies. So to them, good luck for the rest of the season. And yeah, it's great to see them performing. However, we need to talk a bit of Varsity Cup. I must tell you, Jan,
I don't watch much Varsity Cup. Especially yesterday, I didn't watch a single match because I was at Rassie's press conference. So I'm going to leave that one in your hands, because all I know is that UJ beat Potch, I think, if I'm correct.
Yes. Jan, there's not a lot of rugby to watch because there's only 2 matches that's usually televised. But it's clear that this year's Varsity Cup, there's a few teams that are very, very strong, and that's still in the running for it. I think the 2 teams that have shown that they are not going to be in any playoffs is Emirates, the new team, and as well as most probably CUT. So let's talk about the UJ game. What a fantastic rugby game. You know, UJ led the first half. They were far ahead, and they started defending their lead in the second half, and Picker came back and they were ahead with I think about 2 minutes to go, and UJ scored. It was just a fantastic rugby game. And the other game that they televised was CUT Koffsies in Bloem. The derby there, Koffsies just outplayed them, I think 71-19, and it showed the difference. If you look at the rest of the results, Tikkies looks like the team this year. They beat Marties, and apparently it was not televised, but apparently Marties put up a good show. But it was 33-17, and then, which you all expected as well, that UCT beat Emirates pretty far. So I think the teams that are starting to show their nails or their teeth is UCT, Marties, Tikkies, UJ, and Pick as well. I won't chuck them away, but what I love about Varsity Cup, and I love the rule, that rule that we talked about last week. Freya talked about it, the 2-minute rule. There was a try scored from it that changed the dynamic of the game, and the support that these at the varsity games are unreal. I don't know if everybody watches the games, but the vibe is on, and I think that's positive.
Eugene, yeah, like I said, I didn't watch any of the games because I was busy doing Rassie stuff and preparing for this podcast with Rassie stuff. So let's switch on to the big news of the week. Rassie and Saru had a massive big press conference yesterday, lasted over 2 hours, and it's wonderful that they do that. Rassie does this once a year, where he gives you access for hours and you can ask anything you like, and it was. For me, the impressive thing, and the thing that I want to touch on, because he announced his first alignment camp, which they're busy this week with their alignment camp, and those guys are busy at the moment as we speak. That squad includes, to me, some significant new inclusions and some significant absentees. I want to ask you, I mean, you obviously seen the squad. Eugene, I want to ask you, what is the biggest surprise for you, or the biggest inclusion for you in that squad?
Yeah, you know, it's not just the inclusion. What I like about the whole process is the holistic approach they have of continuity. Maybe letting senior players have a break and bringing in new players. And I think last year's Junior World Cup had a big influence on some of these decisions. I believe so. And what I like about what Rossi is doing, him and his team, is they're giving these boys, they're rewarding young boys that are doing well. And you can think of, there's not one I want to single out, but if I think out of head quickly, Kai Pratt, the loose head, Paul de Villiers, who's been excellent the whole season. Asim Pied, who I rate highly, the scrum off. And then, of course, a young Marcus Miller coming from Gim. I think that should inspire young players to know that if you work hard, you can get there maybe sooner than you think. But I also know that Ross and them will not just chuck these guys for the wolves. And the quicker you bring them into the system, the better. That they understand the system, that they understand the culture, and that they get into the swing of things. And I like that approach. I like the open approach they've got with this whole media conference they had, opening it up and being overt about all the information and sharing it, because our rugby mad supporters love to know what's cooking. And I mean, everything, all the questions and good questions were asked by you as well. So yeah, I think maybe this is where you should elaborate.
Eugene, yeah, I think that for me the significant thing is Rassie made it clear, and we'll share the clip. We'll afterwards I'll insert a clip here from the press conference where I asked Rassie, but he made it pretty clear that 18 months out from the World Cup in Australia next year, he's got a very good idea of which players he wants to take to the World Cup. Obviously, there's going to be injuries. Obviously, there could be suspensions. A lot of things could happen. People could lose form. But he's got a very good idea of who he wants to take. And that's why this squad is, for me, so this current alignment camp squad is, for me, so significant. It's not who is there. And it's important who is there. Rassie made it pretty clear. There's no guarantee for these youngsters that they're going to play this year, that they'll be debuting for the Springboks this year. But they're part of the system. They know. They can learn from the senior players. But the guys who are not there is significant. And I want to list this. The important ones are Hooker, Bongi and Benami. We know how important he was at the last World Cup. Bongi's lost 4. He's gone. We also know that Faf de Klerk is not there, even though he's injured and he's in Japan and stuff. So Faf is also not in that squad. So the Japan guys are obviously not there. But Faf's name, I think we won't see when those guys start featuring. The other significant one from the local players that's not there is Willie Leroux, who's also not there. And we know that Willie's played his 100 tests, and we all expected that he would quietly fade into the background, into retirement, maybe take up coaching. He's still playing for the Bulls, so he's still involved in the Bulls setup. But I think Willie has played his last test. Then obviously there's a guy like Trevor Nyakani who's not featuring in the squad. So, you got guys like that. And Vincent Koch, that's the other big name. Vincent Koch is also not there. And those are guys that are currently playing in South Africa that are not featuring in this alignment camp. And I think those are the names that we know is not going to go. And that's a significant. Along with those young guys that Rassie is bringing in, he's now also taken some of these, I don't want to say deadwood because it sounds so nasty, but they are more senior players, advanced in years, and their form is not good enough to warrant a selection in the Springbok team at the moment. So that's the big thing for me, is that Rassie made it pretty clear. He knows what his squad looks like, and he's got all these alignment camps. He's got we've got 10 tests this year, well 11. So we got the 3 July tests plus the Barbers game. Then we got the 4 tests against the All Blacks, and then we got the 3 year-end tests. That's 11 tests already this year, and then next year we'll have a similar number of tests. So we got about 20 tests, 22 tests in the next 2 years before the World Cup, where Rassie can try out different things. But so he knows exactly where he's heading, and I think we know now that Rassie is meticulous in his planning, and it's going to be a massive big period. So yeah, I'm really happy about the squad. I think you can always nitpick and find fault with Rassie's squad, but I'm very, very happy with Rassie's squad and the direction that he's taking.
Yeah, Sean, I agree with you, but I won't just say these guys that has been picked are gone, because Rassie knows what he has in them as well. He knows what they can do. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure there must be reasoning behind it, more other than deadwood, which it isn't a nice word. But sometimes you lose your form. Sometimes you come back from injury. Sometimes you're busy with rehab. You never know what the situation is. But the exciting part of it, a few new faces are going to get a run, and you know how that works. I always tell the players, you must be audible ready, that the day you get the opportunity the coach must have no choice than to pick you. So to all the guys that have been picked, congratulations. Give it your best shot, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys play.
Yeah, Eugene, I will put the squad in the notices below so that the viewers can see the squad. For those who haven't seen, I'm sure everybody's seen the squad, but I'll put it in the notices below. But I think now's a good time that we go to Rassie and listen to how he answers my questions about the next 18 months forward.
Hi, you guys obviously now know in our previous discussion there was uncertainty about things. Now you know every game you've got. How comfortable are you with the plans in terms of rotating and in terms of the depth you've got? We've all seen the squad that you've named. Are you happy with where you are as a team in general and a squad in general?
Yes, I think we're okay. Hello. I think the big thing is we just as coaches had a quick discussion. If you guys ask us that, what are we going to say? Because that's every guy in the street asks us that, and probably haven't heard it out of our mouths. I think we've always said 18 months out from the World Cup, you really know who will probably make it to next year and who won't. But we know much more now than 48 months ago, or 36 months ago, or 20 years ago. So for us, knowing that we're playing top teams here this year, not that I'm saying Italy and those guys weren't here. I really rate Italy, as I said, but we are really playing. If you look at the schedule now and think where you gonna do it, then some people will say after we play England, those next two games, and then you might have the rest of the year bad year if you made a mistake. I think Andy gave me the stat 9 as average 9 changes on a team that we did last year. So I think by doing the things the way we did in the past, we're not under pressure to do it this year, because we've learned some lessons and we've trialed some guys and we know who can do it and who can't do it. But the big thing, what we are trying really hard behind the scenes, always with SA Rugby's help, always, and the franchises, is to make sure that the player depth in each position, and you can even have 6 if 5 guys go down. Look at when Stephen Donald went to New Zealand, when 3 first choice fly-offs. It's Stephen Donald. Stephen Donald. I mean, he was 4th choice, and he flew there and he kicked the last kick over. So shit, you want to win the World Cup, but you can't always look. You don't have 5 or 6 deep. You must find 5 or 6 deep. So I guess that's going to be at the end of the year. We want to say that. We're not saying all of those guys played, but on the succession planning, the guys in place.
We are not 100% sure how things will pan out. We know what our first 2 games are, and are we busy planning for those 2 ones. Of course, it's not pretty easy, but the one's Barbarians, the other one is England. And you know what you're going to get from England. Not saying that's going to be easy. You know it's going to be difficult. And then from Australia, from Barbarians, it's a team that's really competitive, but they throw it out there on the day, and there's a little bit of spice there with Razor and who's that coach? Well, Filippo. He was also in a World Rugby meeting last week. So the 2 of them coaching him. So let's see how we kick off in that Barbarian game and how things work, and how we get into that England Test match. And we always say, if we keep on winning, we even tell the team on Saturday, listen guys, if things go our way this weekend, this is probably the team that will play next week. So we do it always a week ahead, but with Jacques used this word, caveat, with the caveat that if things goes bad or you lose a little bit of momentum, then you can still make changes. So for me to say to you now, listen, we will again use 51 players. I don't know, maybe we use 57. Or maybe we lose 33. Depends on how we going. This maybe I'm answering too long. A little bit later, ask me about are we going to challenge different championships or competitions? Because if you've lost one or you're busy winning one, that can also have you've seen in top 14 and European Cup, if the team falls out, it goes and focus on the other one. Not that we will ever do that at Test match rugby. We will always go out and try and win, but some things might sometimes force you into test your depth up.
Eugene is very interesting from Rassie, but there was other interesting. To me, the more interesting guys I found was Tony Brown, the All Black, who is with the Box till 27. He made it pretty clear that he's with the Springboks till after the 27 World Cup. He hasn't made a call on his future after that. If he gets a call from the All Blacks, he might take it up. If he doesn't get a call, he might stay with the Springboks. Him and Jerry Flannery are two guys who are involved in the evolution of the Springbok game. And we all know that the Springboks playing differently to what they played in the 23 World Cup. And I think Rassie even back then already said, you can't do the same things every year because people is going to learn and you got to evolve all the time. And Johnny Brown made it pretty clear that the Springboks are so evolved that nobody can, if you think you're going to take on the box scrum, and you might get that on the day, you might get the scrum, but then they still got the lineouts and the mauls, and then they've got good scrum halves, and then they've got good fly halves, and then they got their centers and their wings, and they got the counter attacks, they got the breakdown. So you made it pretty clear that the Springboks are no longer a one-trick pony. They are definitely a more all-rounded team that can punish you in every area of or aspect of the field, and that's also what Jerry said. And he also said that the whole idea in the next 18 months is to make sure that the Springboks continue to evolve so that they don't become stale.
Yes, Sean, I must just say one thing. Rassie Erasmus, since he's been a coach, coaching the Cheetahs, has always been a step ahead. I remember at the conferences we always had in Sydney, he was always out of the box and came with a new idea. And that's his style of coaching. It's always been, you can follow his career where he's been. You need to on top of it. And by the time you think you've sussed him out, he's already got a new plan. But I think he's got the right personnel to implement it. So it's not them bringing it. It's the whole process that Rossi's implementing and the guys that he used that are bringing that. And the great thing about that is, and I understand where they come from, is that opposition go look at your videos or your matches and they can get a certain pattern and say, right, this is what they do in the 22. This is what they do here on the field. This is the lineouts. This is the scrums. This is the strike moves. This is starter moves. So very much, if you've got a good analytic system, you can work out a team. But what we've got now, we're unpredictable. We're not stereotyped. We're unstereotyped. And that's what I like about it. And that's what's making us dangerous. And many years ago, New Zealand was that team. Now we are it. And I think the big secret is to always stay ahead. I think.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Okay.
And you touched on Rassie, and we have to give him credit because he always knows how to get the right people involved. I think Tony made it pretty clear that under Jacques Nienaber, they built a foundation on defense, and that worked. It worked for 2 World Cups, but now they've added other layers to that, and that's the importance. And I think maybe now is a good time to listen to Tony and Jerry and what they said about where the Springboks are and where they're going in the next 18 months.
I think the biggest one is that, like, if you speak real plainly, is that, like, Jacques had put it has laid the massive foundation for the 2 World Cup wins with the work that he did around the defence, and I think that was probably something that was overarching around the South African game is embracing the stuff that South Africans do better than anyone else, which is being so physical, being so fit as well. And I think that's given a great framework. I think Tony's come in and there's probably been a little more evolution towards the attack in terms of the attack was not as constrained going forward then, and Brownie's taken it to another level. I don't think you can ever say you can consolidate and sit on something and say it's okay, because as we've seen, we're just chatting with the Six Nations, the game is constantly evolving and you've got to be on it every single week looking to see where is there a small gain that you can make there and take advantage of the direction the game is going. And I think Brownie has been world class at doing that with us.
I just think that probably over the last 2 years we've seen us not just defend for long periods of time, not just attack or go to the kicking game. I think the evolution of the Springbok rugby is how we combine our defence, attack, kicking game, set piece, and we combine it together and try and put teams under massive pressure to obviously score points and win test matches. So we never ever look at a test match where we're going to attack and we're going to put these guys under huge pressure with our attack. We always go, this is how we control the game, this is how we use our kicking game, this is how we use our defence to create turnovers, and then we build our attack off those 2 things. So I think that's probably been the evolution. The players have enjoyed it. The players have got better as we've gone through the last couple of years. They're starting to understand how it all fits together now. So I feel as though we're in a powerful position to push that forward over the next 12 months. No rugby team can look at the Springboks and go, if we shut this down, we're going to win the Test match. I think we've got so many different layers to our game now. We can win with defence, we can win with scrum, we can win with the maul, we can win with the kicking game, we can win with counter-attack, we can win with turnover attack, we can win with set-piece attack. So I think we're a lot more dangerous as a rugby team now, and it's exciting to see where we can push it.
Always great to listen to these guys that really understand the modern game of rugby. But another interesting thing is there were a lot of rumors about law changes, and this is going to change, the scrum is going to be taken away, the line is going to change, ball's taken away. And I think you might have information of interesting comments that Jaco Paper made regarding the possible rule change.
Eugene, the big news, and Rassie touched on it, but Jaco made it pretty clear. The big news, because I went to the state of the game in London with the World Rugby. So all the countries got together and they chatted about the game and where the game should go. And Jaco made it pretty clear. There will be no significant changes in the laws before the World Cup in 2027. So the laws as they are now will stay the same. There might be minor tweaks here and there if there's a dangerous thing around some sort of tackle or some sort of, but there's going to be no significant changes. So the guys who were crying to depower the scrum, they lost, because Rassie played his game very well. He was there, and Jaco made it pretty clear. The kick and chase, where they try to block the chases for the kicking game, because South Africa's got some brilliant players in the high game, the high ball game. And they wanted to take that away and put blockers in, that umbrella that they put in front of the chasers. That has been declined. So our strengths won't be touched before the World Cup in 2020. And I think Jaco put it very succinctly that there will be work to be done for the Springboks. He spoke about a number of penalties per game, and we touched on that. And what he said for me there, which is very interesting, is that it's not so much the number of penalties, but in context of the game. So, and that's what the average guy there in the street, we all look at numbers and we all play with stats. But it's significant. You know, if you don't have the ball and you defend for 30 minutes, you are going to concede penalties. But it's the silly penalties, you know, the bumping a player that's in the way, or perhaps high tackling when you shouldn't be high tackling, there's no need for it. So those sort of things is what is important for the Springboks and what they've been working on, and which is the reason they're such a good team. So I think it's important to listen to Jaco and what he said about the law changes and what hasn't changed and what won't change, and how the Springboks will adapt and evolve.
Jaco, we can start with you. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk, and we've obviously seen that nothing is going to change before the World Cup. How happy are you with where the Springboks are in terms of their appliance to the changes over the past year or so, and where they are heading into the next World Cup in terms of the laws?
I don't think nothing's going to change. I don't think anything fundamental is going to change. So there will be slight changes. You know, we've got to keep making the game better. So there is places where we can get better, but I think the big consensus was we have to keep the identity of rugby. So that's not we're not going to change around those. And obviously, if there's safety issues that come up in the next season, there'll still be guidelines to avoid that, or law changes to make the game safer for the players. Springbok wise, I think we can get better. We've adjusted okay so far. I don't think we're satisfied. I think we believe we can do better. We obviously have a bit of work to do because we're an aggressive team. We have to make sure that the players go in safely and that they feel safe, not just your position, that they as tacklers feel safe. So we have a bit of work to do this year to make sure that our taller players, you know, do the level change, get the wraps right, because those things happen so quickly. So it's conditioning. You can't change that on the field. You have to change that through your URC season. So part of this alignment camp will be giving feedback to individual players on how they track, those sort of things. But we need to improve, yes.
Is there a set number of penalties per game that you want to be below? I know there's a lot of talk about that. What would the level be?
So as long as the penalty count fits the game. So we try and put that in context. If you defend for 30 minutes and you're 22, we can't expect a team to just give 6 penalties away. That's probably impossible. But we don't want to give avoidable penalties away. So, and we don't want to we call it box smart. We want to be a smart team, not too clever, but we want to be a team that don't concede penalties that is clearly avoidable or that is silly or indisciplined. Teams have to force us into penalties.
Yes, Jan. I've got a message for all the coaches out there that might help them in the future and planning to play against us. Sun Tzu wrote a book, The Art of Warfare, and it's also about deception. And what was important in that, he said, when your enemy, or let's talk opponents, think you're attacking, you're busy regrouping. And when they think you're regrouping, you're actually attacking. So read the book. For coaches, it's a great book to read before you play your opponents. And have a lucky day.
Eugene, thank you very much. As always, such a pleasure to chat. And maybe we get some more from this press conference next week, if we've got time for it next week. And we'll chat about it next week. From myself, Jan de Koning, and my friend Eugene Eloff. Till next week. Cheers.